Johnny Carson couldn't stop laughing when Jonathan Winters said this.
Cold spell set in, just kept him harder than a cart.
And this funny story told by Winters had the entire studio in stitches.
I said, Mother, where are my toys? There's long pause. She said, you're 20 years old, dummy. And
Here are some of the funniest drinking stories Jonathan Winters ever told on Johnny Carson Show. Number 1. Drinking with Jack Maguire. This first one aired on January 20th, 1976, and it opens with Winters mentioning that he'd recently gone to visit an old friend from way back.
I saw an old friend of mine, Jack Maguire. He and I used to have some fun times and have a little gasoline, you know. And
Walking Johnny through the years the two of them logged together, roughly 15 to 20 years earlier, he paints a picture of two young men behaving in the wildest, most erratic ways you could imagine. Strange things filled their days, odd substances they claimed to pour down their throats.
drank some shaving lotion and stuff, so we talked about old times.
What makes the whole segment sing is Johnny's total buy-in. He refuses to just sit back and wait for the finish. Instead, he nods along, confirms that he remembers those days too, and keeps the momentum rolling, while Winters stacks one absurd image on top of another.
And I was telling him about the days, 15, 20 years ago, when we would do strange things together.
Oh yeah, hide in the bushes and...
Remember some of those?
Sure.
Here's Winters at his most nostalgic and gloriously unhinged, transforming a simple visit with a buddy into a runaway train of memory. And that's the perfect place to begin, because it lays down the template for everything else on this list. Winters never told jokes in the traditional sense. What he did instead was build entire worlds, handing you characters, exaggeration, and a running commentary on his own misspent youth while Johnny rode on the whole way.
Sure, I remember most of them. And there are a lot of them I don't, of course, I remember.
That was the engine humming underneath every one of these segments. Give the man a single thread of memory, real or invented, and he'd pull on it until the whole room came apart. Johnny grasped that better than anyone, which explains exactly why he kept inviting him back. Number 2. The Christmas Eve story.
I was setting up the train because Dad was resting. He rested for the first 7 years of... it was like this. Hey, how you doing?
Airing on December 8, 1988, this ranks among the warmer, more vivid stories in the whole collection, and it centers on one unforgettable Christmas Eve from Winters' childhood. Picture December 24th.
You know, it's interesting to see a guy really juiced to the gills and bombed. Here's a little rosy-faced kid, sort of angelic. I was in those days.
A young Jonathan kneels on the floor, wrestling with a Lionel train set, which for anybody who came up in that era, counted as the toy of American Christmas. During its heyday, Lionel moved 2 out of every 3 toy trains sold in the entire country, and the whole brand wrapped itself around the image of fathers and sons gathered close around the tree.
I'd put on makeup. A kid down the block was a little different from me. And put on little discs, and I was trying to do the Nutcracker Suite and everything.
That backdrop matters here, because the father in this particular story is not exactly in prime train-building condition. Winters describes his dad, a man he jokes had spent the first 7 years of Jonathan's life resting, arriving for the holiday in a getup that truly has to be heard to be believed.
Christmas Eve, we're going to set the train up, and he's in a seersucker suit and a swimming trunks, The conversation, kids never forget. 2 people really on you. My mother saying, "Go to bed."
Half the fun lies in the details of that outfit, and the audience absolutely roars at the picture. Johnny leans in at precisely the right beat to ask whether his father was celebrating something.
My old man's like it. Don't put the try to put the train together now.
Your father was celebrating, was he?
He was celebrating something. Yeah.
And Winters fires back with a reason so ridiculous, involving an old portrait of a former president toppling clean off the mantle that it lands without a hitch. The story climbs toward a small physical mishap involving the train track itself.
I think that his old picture of Hoover fell off the mantle, and I asked that stupid question. I said, "How are you feeling?" I never said, "How are we feeling?" How are you feeling?
With Jonathan distracted and his shoes still soaked through from the snow outside. All the while, Johnny holds the line as the steady straight man, feeding Winters those dry little prompts that let the comic keep painting.
So I went over to kiss him. So I get, full blast. And it was at that time with wet shoes that I stepped on the track.
Watch closely, and you're seeing a masterclass in how two performers construct something together, one setting the table while the other floods it with color. Number 3. Explaining himself on the roadside.
I remember one time talking momentarily about the police. I was doing about 75, 80. Of course, I saw the red light going.
This next one reaches back a little further to November 13th, 1973, and it stands as one of the most self-deprecating pieces in the entire run. Winters recounts a night when he was behind the wheel in no condition to be there, moving at a serious clip right up until he spotted the flashing lights of a patrol officer trailing him.
And slowed down immediately, and I was bombed through the gills. And the guy said, "Pull over."
Rather than come clean, Winters landed on a decision that only he could ever make. He invented a story on the spot. Whatever he improvised for that officer amounts to a small work of art, a surreal chain of events built around a natural disaster 20 miles back.
And I said, "Whereabouts?" And right there. He came over, he said, "See your license, please?" And I said, "Yep, it's here somewhere."
A collapsed bridge that supposedly forced his reckless driving, an electrical storm, and even an aircraft coming down in a nearby field. All of it pours out with a straight face, and the audience is delighted by the sheer nerve of the thing.
He said, "You've been drinking." I said, "I'm so glad you stopped me." I said, I just experienced an earthquake about 20 miles back.
The outcome is exactly the kind of dry button Winters loved to stamp on a story. He also folds in a quieter memory from a place called the Garden of Allah, a legendary hotel that once stood on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood.
I gave him a story. I told him an earthquake, an electrical storm, saw a plane land in a field, and all the time the guy's just doing this. Wonderful, very funny, very funny.
This was a genuine landmark, a hideaway for movie stars and writers that first opened its doors back in the 1920s. The likes of F. Scott Fitzgerald and Humphrey Bogart passed through those grounds, famous for a pool said to be shaped like the Black Sea, right up until the wrecking crews finally leveled it in 1959.
And gave me a check, not a check, gave me a ticket.
You may have asked for the
Yeah, I
check
may
at the
have
time.
asked, yes.
Give me the check, officer. I remember us sitting together one night.
Winters recalls sitting beside that pool with Johnny himself, both of them fully clothed just to cool off. He frames the scene as the moment he realized it might be time to change his ways.
I remember both of us sitting together one night on a place called the Garden of Allah.
I remember
that?
we sat on the pool, and we were completely clothed, and just put our legs in the pool, shoes and everything on.
To cool off.
That's when I knew it was time to stop.
And even that turn lands gently, wrapped in laughter rather than regret. Number 4. Crawling to find the car. Jumping ahead to December 20th, 1991, this segment plays as a two-hander from the very start, because Johnny is the one who kicks it into motion.
You have been in the past been to Christmas parties. Both of us been to Christmas parties years ago where we had, more than...
Well, where we had to crawl out, on our hands and knees and try to make out where the car is.
Yeah.
He raises the fact that both he and Winters had, in years gone by, attended their share of holiday parties, where they may have enjoyed themselves a touch too thoroughly. That's the only runway Winters needs.
It's embarrassing to spend a whole evening, where is my car?
Taking the handoff, he immediately paints the aftermath of one of those evenings, describing the two of them reduced to hunting for their vehicles on their hands and knees. The comedic heart of the bit lives in a small exchange about somebody asking Winters where their car went, and his reply,
Mr. Winters, don't you know? No, I wouldn't have said that. I know. No. What kind of car is it? I don't know that.
carries the kind of quick, absurd logic that made him who he was. Laughter and applause pour out of the audience, savoring both the self-deprecation and the obvious warmth crackling between the two men. Johnny could not be a better partner here. He laughs along, validates the shared history, and keeps the rhythm alive with follow-up questions about exactly what kind of car they were even hunting for.
Or if you brought one.
The real car is a black car.
Now, with
And
this
the tires.
Yeah.
This is the friendship on full display. Two men who genuinely liked each other, trading a memory that may or may not have unfolded quite the way they claim, and having the time of their lives in the retelling. Number 5. Meditating in the snow.
I remember one time, some highway, a major highway.
Had concrete on it and everything.
Had
Yes.
concrete and everything. And I was sitting like this in the snow.
We circle back to that same January 20th, 1976 appearance for this next entry, and it might be the most gloriously absurd image on the entire list.
State Highway Patrolman came out and he said, can I help you? And I said, yes, you can.
Winters describes being discovered sitting on the shoulder of a major highway out in the snow, calmly meditating over a bottle he'd brought along for company. A state patrol officer rolls up and asks whether he needs any help.
I've been meditating over whether this vodka's gone or still there. So he took me in for a little observation.
Without missing a beat, Winters tells the man precisely what he's been pondering, and it's the last thing that officer ever expected to hear. From there, the story only spirals stranger.
I was frozen harder than a cart. Yeah, I remember all that night, the officer and I, he was very nice to me. We sat in his car.
With Winters taken into the patrolman's care before turning the tables and poking fun at the officer, right down to grumbling about the man's weak car battery. He describes himself frozen stiff.
He didn't have a very good battery, and so he was kept... And I made fun of that,
And somehow makes the whole ordeal sound less like a rough night and more like a comic misadventure he wandered into on purpose. What lends this one a little extra hard is the way Johnny closes it out. He gently asks whether Winters misses those wilder days.
You ever miss those days?
No, I don't. I tell you, I like it better the way I am now.
Right.
Because when I see something in the zoo, I recognize it.
And Winters answers honestly, in his own roundabout fashion, that he much prefers where he sits now, because these days he can actually recognize the animals whenever he visits the zoo. A soft, funny landing that tells you everything about the man, and the audience just eats it up.
You say that's a bear.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lion.
Number 6. Winters' parents liked to drink.
I came home from the war, and I was just, again, talking about Thanksgiving, like yourself, strafing people there in Philadelphia. But I came home.
This segment aired on November 25th, 1987, and it builds around Winters returning home after serving in World War II. For context, the man really did serve in the United States Marine Corps out in the Pacific during the war.
Went down the Stone Road. And my mother was there, and I said, you had to cue her a lot, and she was in show business. She was in radio and an actress.
Leaving high school at 17 to enlist, he spent roughly 2.5 years overseas and even served as aboard an aircraft carrier, which means the setup springs from a real chapter of his life, even though the telling that night ran as pure comedy.
But I'd say, Mother, it's me, and her eyes were not Vaseline at that time. And I said, Johnny, your son, I see you.
The story finds him arriving back on his home road and reuniting with his mother, who, as Winters points out, was herself a show business figure. That part checks out too. His mother worked in radio back in Ohio, eventually becoming one of the first women to deliver the news over the airwaves in her area.
So it was a very demonstrative family, and ran to it. A lot of the minorities would run and grab each other. But
so his line about her being in radio and acting isn't invented at all. It's family history. Winters describes the reunion with his signature, detached, observational humor, riffing on how different families show affection in different ways before building toward a small, unexpected detail about the moment his mother finally wrapped him up.
Boy, when you're full Caucasian, a lot of times it's back off, So,
Full Caucasians are like
Caucasian.
that. Yeah, I know what you mean.
And eventually she grabbed me, the bottle dropped, Oh, nice, sweetheart, it is you.
Laughter runs through the audience the whole way, especially at his bone-dry delivery about the family dynamic. Here's a great example of how Winters could seize on something as ordinary as a homecoming and thread it with just enough oddball observation to make it entirely his own.
So I went to my room, which got this area in here. I said, Mother, where are my toys? There's a long pause. She said, you're 20 years old, dummy. And
Johnny, as always, hands him the room to wander, wherever the memory chooses to take him. Number 7. The Trouble at the Ranch.
Here's Sunday week, we come into a flash flood.
Oh, no, on
yeah,
the ranch?
we got 3,600 acres there. 3,600 acres and only 2 cows.
Oh.
That was always her humor.
On May 13, 1987, Winters turned up not entirely as himself, but in character as a fellow he called Buck Needlehofer, using that persona to spin a tall tale about disaster striking his ranch. This is Winters in full improvisational flight, inhabiting a character and building an entire absurd history for him on the spot.
So when we found them, they were skeletons. And water took the guys in the bunkhouse. There'd been that or whiskey. And it took them. There was 17 of them.
He opens by describing his sprawling property, thousands of acres, which he jokes contained only 2 cows, and even those 2 didn't fare well in the end. From there, he moves to the men who worked his bunkhouse and the strange fates that found them once the water came rushing through.
They found him in unusual positions. Guy up there on a tree like this. Another man laid back, obviously saying, what the hell?
He describes finding them afterward in the most unusual positions imaginable. One fellow somehow lodged up in a tree, another laid back with an expression of pure resignation, before capping the whole thing off by revealing the source of the flood, a detail he claims he never even knew existed on his own land.
Those flash floods come in immediately, and you have to just make a run for it.
Well, the dam broke.
Oh my God.
Which we never knew was in back of that ranch.
Johnny plays this one beautifully. Leaning all the way into the bit, he offers soft, faux-shocked interjections that keep Winters rolling. Little gasps of "oh no" and "oh my" that hand the story its rhythm. Once Winters finally wraps it up, Johnny validates the entire bizarre saga with a warm, understated welcome that acknowledges just how gloriously strange the character's whole history has turned out to be.
You'd think you go up there to fish, but we never did go back up in there, and somebody got the plane in the dam and broke it.
The audience stays locked in the whole way, laughing hardest at the sheer nonchalance with which Winters narrates the chaos. This entry really showcases why the loose, unscripted Tonight Show format made the perfect home for a talent like his. Winters needed no monologue and no written bit. Hand him a character and a starting point, and he'd construct a world in real time. Number 8. The phone call back in Ohio.
It is a fun story. I'd gone back to Ohio to see my mother, and it was at Christmas time, and all of us were feeling no pain. My stepmother, my
We close on a story that aired March 8, 1973, and it lands as a perfect note to finish on because it captures Winters, the character comedian, the man who could never resist becoming somebody else at a moment's notice.
My stepfather was certainly in rare form, and my mother had had a few, and I'd had several. A drink of your choice. Yes, a little touch of the grape.
He sets the scene years earlier, back home in Ohio visiting his mother, stepfather, and a whole crowd of relatives around Christmas. The entire family drifting through a festive and very relaxed mood.
Like many people who imbibe in drinks, you get telephonitis and want to call the world. And so I wanted to call a friend of mine. He was a funeral director.
Feeling that particular urge that comes over people who've had a merry evening, the pull to grab the phone and call the world, Winters decides to ring up an old school friend of his, a man who happened to work as a funeral director. He doesn't call as himself, though.
So I called him, and I assumed a character, and I knew that he didn't seen me or heard my voice in a long, long time, so I knew I was home free.
Slipping into a completely invented character, a fellow with a name only Winters could ever dream up, he presents this poor funeral director with the single most outlandish professional request the man had ever fielded. What unfolds next is an escalating back and forth.
And I called him up. I said, is Mr. Arthur Lyle Jr. there? He said, yes, speaking. And I said, is this Arthur Lyle Jr.? He said, yes.
Winters as his invented caller describing an impossible situation in ever more ridiculous detail, the funeral director growing more astonished with every passing second on the other end of the line. The specifics of what Winters claims to have done.
I said, well, this is Elwood B. Suggins, and I live out on the Lakewood Beach area, and my brother passed away here Sunday week, and...
And where he claims to have kept things count as exactly the kind of material only he could deliver, with a completely straight face. Laughter and applause reward the whole performance. And the capper, when Winters finally drops the act and reveals who's really been on the phone the entire time.
I was wondering if you could do a job on it. And there was a long pause.
Makes the perfect closing beat for a comic who spent his whole career convincing people he was somebody else. This brand of character work was Winters' entire signature. He built a career on invented personas.
Where have you got him? And I said, well, most of our people are from Boise, and I didn't want them to have him come that far just to look at grass, you know. We put him out there on the porch and set him up against a lattice.
Folksy Midwestern types and oddball characters that he swore he'd lifted straight from real people he'd known growing up in small Ohio towns. His improvisational gift ran so deep that a young Robin Williams would later call him his idol and his mentor, and the two eventually worked side by side on television.
Son come out, and he commenced to get fleshy. But I tell you, Mr. Lionel, even in death, there's humor. My eldest boy twisted the deceased hand around and put a softball in it.
Winters stands, by any measure, among the pioneers who showed a whole generation what a comedian could pull off without a script in hand.
Cold spell set in, just kept him harder than a cart.
And right here, on Johnny's stage, all of that talent came pouring out in the shape of a single phone call.
So then of course, I broke in. I said, well, it's Johnny Winters, and he said a few things.
So there you have it. Winters would settle into that chair, reach deep into a bottomless bag of memories both real and imagined, and Johnny Carson would happily hand him the room. The chemistry Winters described so simply as being on the same frequency lives in every single one of these segments. That's the thing that set Winters apart. He didn't do jokes, as he liked to put it. The characters were his jokes, whether he was reminiscing about a wayward friend, a chaotic Christmas, a night in the snow, or a phone call he never should have placed. He took the ordinary business of telling a story and turned it into something nobody else could match. Johnny knew it, the audience knew it, and all these years later, it still holds up. Winters ranked among the very few guests Johnny would simply turn loose, mostly because Johnny had no idea what was coming and usually had to coax the whole story out of him live on camera. That unpredictability was the entire appeal. Winters once described the two of them as being on the same frequency, and you can feel it. Johnny adored him. He once sent Winters a signed photo of himself laughing until he nearly cried, inscribed with a mock insult swearing up and down that Winters was definitely not funny. That was the running joke between them, because everyone alive knew he was one of the funniest people who ever drew breath. If this trip back to the Carson couch brought a smile, there's plenty more where it came from. And the best of Jonathan Winters always rewards a second visit.